Hi there. Welcome to the second serving of our Lunch Specials Food and Ag Innovation Chat. This week we'll be talking with folks from Cornell Cows, the Tech Garden in Syracuse, and Acumen Detection. I am Jen Smith. I'm the director of the Grow New York Food and Ag Innovation Competition. The competition has $3 million in prizes annually. The applications are open now and will stay open through July 15th. We have weekly information sessions on how to tackle the application. And to learn more about the program, to see upcoming info sessions, to link to the application, you can go to grow-ny.com. I'd also suggest, if you're interested, that you follow the activities of the program, our year one winners, and the entrepreneurs in our network at grow_New York on Instagram and Facebook. So just to give you guys an idea of what to expect this afternoon, we will be taking questions throughout, and I will consolidate them and jump in at the end to pose some of the questions you submit. Please use the QA function that's at the bottom of the window that you're viewing this Zoom on. We will conclude in 30 minutes, right? This is just meant to be a real, brief, succinct, nutritious little serving. And this is a weekly series. So Thursdays at noon, you can see the whole list of activities at grow-ny.com/webinars. We'll be looking at the role of strategic partnerships, expanding to a second sphere of activity, and when to bring on sales support in the coming weeks with members of our ecosystem. Today, we're going to be talking about how you find the right problems to solve. My colleague from the Tech Garden, Janine Rogers, who's the program manager there, will say a few words about the services that they offer to startups there in Syracuse. And then Chuck Stormon, the founder of Acumen Detection, will be interviewed by Tom Mueller, who's a Cal student, to address those questions of how do you find the right problems to solve. So with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Janine.
Yes, so the Tech Garden is the premier business incubator in Central New York. That distinction is by Empire State Development's designation as Central New York's innovation hotspot, which is a tax incentive program, but more so, the hotspot program charters us to collaborate with other incubators, accelerators, venture capital, and industry associations, and any other organization that services formative stage businesses in our region. We work to align programs, resources, and events to provide services to startups that will move them from concept to commercialization. The Tech Garden itself primarily focuses on high-tech, high-growth companies, as we have identified that as a need in our market for that targeted support. But we also work with regional incubators to support all entrepreneurs, and we have a special focus on tech and manufacturing through the Hotspot program. We are a recognized hub of innovation and entrepreneurship and a pipeline of startups to our partners. And in order to make those connections, we facilitate an event called Innovation Village. And Innovation Village is where entrepreneurs looking for services and support can learn more about the Tech Garden's mission and model, and also discover all of our partners directly to determine their best fit in our ecosystem. One of our teams doing amazing work is Acumen Detection. And Acumen Detection provides diagnostic reagents to the dairy industry. Dairies and their veterinarians use Acumen's products to improve milk quality and animal well-being. And in a recent pivot, Acumen is adding diagnostic reagents for COVID-19 testing to their product line. I'll let Chuck Stormon, CEO, tell you more about that.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all doing well on this lovely Thursday afternoon. Well, I'm very pleased to be here today with Mr. Chuck Stormon of Acumen Detection. I guess I'd like to start by having Chuck kind of walk us through how he found his way to Acumen.
Thanks, Tom, and thank you, Jen and Janine, as well. It's unusual how life little twists and turns take one in directions one could never expect. I started out as a computer engineer, and through founding a series of companies and having an entrepreneurial pathway, became an investor and a board member in quite a few tech businesses. Acumen Detection was a business that already existed as part of a local defense contractor when I was asked to come in and lead the company as a consultant. The reason I was brought in was the company had built its minimum viable product, and it had found some customers for it, but it hadn't found its way to exponential growth. And the parent company actually wanted to sell the business. So I came in 2 years ago and helped get the business to a point where someone would want to buy it, but we ran out of time. And by then I had fallen in love with the business and decided to acquire it myself. So I purchased all the assets and intellectual property from the parent company and created a new company, Acumen Detection Incorporated, began operations here at the Syracuse Center of Excellence, and with help from the Tech Garden and the Central New York Biotech Accelerator, we just celebrated last month our 1-year anniversary as a tech business in Syracuse.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So sounds like you're very comfortable with the problem Acumen was trying to solve, but looking internally, there were some challenges. Maybe they were misaligned with how they're approaching customer discovery. You kind of went in and reinvented how they were doing all that. Would you be willing to kind of share how you handled that process?
Absolutely. You know, the process of customer discovery, for anybody who's done it, you know, it's not a straight path between 2 points. It literally is a journey of discovery. You start out with all your assumptions of what people want to buy, and you have poured those assumptions into your minimum viable product. And Acumen Detection, when I arrived, was no different than any other startup company. They had found 6 farms that were able to apply its product to reducing the prevalence of disease by using sort of a population approach of testing lots and lots of animals and finding out what the statistics were on the infection rate in those animals, and then working with dairy producers and veterinarians, figuring out what that farm's protocol would be. I guess the problem that I found was Acumen Detection had tried to skip a few steps. They'd gone from minimum viable product with a few customers who were satisfied, and immediately gone to massive and expensive marketing through many channels. And there are many companies whose dead bodies are on the side of the road who've tried the same thing. Customer discovery is really a process of having a conversation with a set of potential channel partners, customers, and influencers, and doing more listening than telling. So rather than investing millions in a marketing campaign, it's a lot of hand-to-hand, mouth-to-mouth kind of personal interaction that gets you the key information you need on how you need to pivot your approach, your product, your distribution channels. Any aspect of the product needs to be open to change and to quickly move in the direction that's going to lead to ultimately to business success. So we began that process of customer discovery, listening more than telling, about 2 years ago, and we're still in that process, although we've achieved quite a bit of success in terms of understanding how veterinarians, dairy producers, food manufacturers who incorporate dairy products, and the whole milk and dairy supply chain. We know a lot more about how that works and what impact we can have on that whole industry now than we did 2 years ago.
All right. And it sounds like through that process, you might have started originally targeting dairy farmers themselves, thinking you might have this product go right on farm and be used by the dairymen, but now you've made a little bit of a pivot and are more working with vet clinics, and that's still the case today?
Yeah, we have over 50 customers and distributors. The distributors are either distributors that sell equipment and materials directly to dairy farms, especially larger dairy farms. And those larger dairy farms will typically have a full-time veterinarian on staff. The second kind of customer that we have are laboratories who are doing analysis of milk and detection of pathogens through laboratory studies. Those labs find our reagents very compelling because we cut down the amount of work the lab has to do to deliver the effective result to the dairy producer. And then the third kind of customer are the veterinarians. The veterinarians themselves, some of them run their own laboratories and provide services to dairy producers. But in all cases, it's the veterinarian who is the one guiding the on-farm protocol. What do they do with the information? And also really building a diagnosis, whereas we're only providing reagents that match nucleic acids in a sample to the nucleic acids that a particular pathogen might express. That's not enough to do a diagnosis, and the veterinarian pulls that information together with all of their experience and all the other data to be able to really both diagnose and recommend what the farm should do with that information. So what we found is that no matter where we try to enter the supply chain, the veterinarian is the key influencer. So our going forward path would be to engage veterinarians through continuing education courses, through giving them an access to the product on a wholesale level, and engaging them up front in the process rather than any other attempt which might be looked at maybe going around them. That's really not a, wouldn't be an effective approach.
So there's some other competitors out there in the space and maybe offer some similar offerings, but sounds like you went a little bit deeper and kind of found a very specific problem to solve. And how do you differentiate yourself in that way?
Sure. I'll talk about our differentiators in two dimensions. The first one being ease of use. There are lots of diagnostic reagent manufacturers, and most of them are much larger companies than we are. But we brought a key innovation to market, which is very technical, but we basically make the job of the analysis using the reagents much simpler. So we're doing DNA matching between a specific pathogen that you're looking for and a sample of perhaps milk, or it could be a nasal swab, looking for the DNA that's in the reagent in the sample. In order to do that, we use a process called polymerase chain reaction, which was a Nobel Prize in the early 80s. It's a very sensitive technique, but it requires that you start out with a fairly pure sample of the DNA from the sample. So to go from a milk sample to pure DNA is about a 15-step exacting laboratory process using lots of reagents to make the DNA the only thing that's left at the end of that process. It might take about an hour per sample. What we were able to do through a tremendous amount of innovation is to create a sample prep that is 3 simple steps and takes about a minute per sample. So from an hour to a minute, that's really our big differentiator between other PCR approaches. And that means that it's possible to do it on a farm and to do it on site, on farm, versus having to do it in an analytical laboratory. So that's a huge differentiator. Now, there are other on-farm systems that can tell you how a cow is producing and whether they have some signs of infection. The difference is that our test is very specific to a single organism. We can tell you not only that the cow is showing signs of infection, but actually that there is a certain specific nucleic acid sequence present in the sample. And a veterinarian can use that to diagnose a disease, that and other corollary information. So much more specific and therefore much more actionable. and the fact that it can be done right on the farm. I'll mention one other thing, although as a serial entrepreneur and a coach and mentor for entrepreneurs, I like to point out price is never a differentiator. Don't go there, because if you use price as your differentiator, you're just in a race to zero. But I will say our system is extremely cost effective, and that makes a big difference in the dairy industry. Our test can be run for about 25% of the cost of a traditional laboratory test.
Yes, that does help a lot. It sounds like some of this technology might have some uses outside of the world of dairy as well, and you're maybe looking into that right now?
Yeah, so we identify pathogens by looking for specific nucleic acid sequences, and that's exactly how tests are run for COVID-19. The diagnostic test for COVID-19 is based on the exact same core technology. So about a month ago, I asked our director of R&D if she wouldn't mind putting together a COVID-19 test. And a little shortening the conversation, she said, sure. And then a little later, she said, okay, I did it and I validated it in the lab and it works. And then we had the moral question in front of us. Okay, we can manufacture the reagents for COVID-19 tests, and everybody's talking about the need for more testing and the problems in the reagent supply chain. So what should we do with this? And our answer is, well, if we can save one life or protect one healthcare worker or help people get back to work safely, then it's our moral obligation to do that. So we borrowed a chunk of money and began a study to see if we could get FDA approval for creating reagents for COVID-19. We're in that process right now. And we're also searching for as a manufacturer, we need to get these reagents in the hands of the laboratories and healthcare organizations that can use them to help save lives. We're only a piece in that supply chain. So we're actively we're back doing customer discovery again, essentially.
So are we leaning more towards that, or are we still thinking dairy is the future?
No. We're absolutely well established in the dairy supply chain, and that is absolutely what we're going to do. We're just trying to save some lives during the emergency.
Right. And so what makes upstate New York such a great place to run a startup?
Well, I got to make a shout out to upstate New York. I'm a lifelong upstate New Yorker. I was born in Niagara Falls. I moved to Syracuse as a freshman in SU, and I've only moved away for 1 year and realized I'd made a horrible mistake and came back. So I absolutely love it here. Just to say, I'm a biased observer, but I want to give a shout out to a couple of the organizations that we have here today. The Tech Garden and Grow New York are both tremendous parts of our entrepreneurial ecosystem. And that ecosystem, I've had the privilege and pleasure of being a part of it and watching it grow for the last 35 years. We have seen a tremendous change from how much support an entrepreneur can get. 35 years ago, I was considered insane to quit my PhD and start a company. Everybody told me, there were nothing but naysayers. Now there would be a lot of people not only applauding, but giving real support in terms of mentorship, in terms of space, in terms of financial support. The ecosystem has really evolved, and these organizations that are here today supporting this talk are a big part of that. And the amount of resources available in Central New York to entrepreneurs is vast.
I'm going to jump in here. First of all, thank you, Chuck, for saying such nice things about the work we're doing and that Tech Garden is doing. Oh, your mug. That's funny. We have...
It's utterly cute.
We have a couple of people who have posted some contact information that I'm going to get to you, Chuck, through Q&A.
Thank you.
But I'm also hoping...
We are hiring both interns and full-time, so please get in contact.
Can you tell us a little more about, going back to the core business, your pivot from targeting dairy producers to targeting vets themselves? What went into driving that decision? What has that looked like in terms of the communications and marketing that you're doing, and any other implications on the business?
Sure. We have not so much pivoted, but narrowed. So when we were 6 customers and spending millions on marketing, we went out broadly to everybody. We sponsored breakfasts at the National Mastitis Council. We had a booth at the American Association of Bovine Practitioners. So those are veterinary trade shows. In addition to that, we went to farm shows. We went to, I would be in our trade show booth right next to the John Deere tractor display. So we were just spraying and praying, as they say. And that's really expensive. What we learned, though, was that at the first AABP, the veterinarian trade show, we were met with a great deal of skepticism. We said, this test can be done on farm. Nobody believed us. One vet in particular, a gentleman named Al Harper, came by and just told us how this was never going to work. The second year at the AABP show, Al Harper came back and said, okay, I've been watching you guys for a year. I want to be a distributor. And Al Harper and his veterinariansoutlet.com and his integrated dairy services organization is our distributor today. So we began to learn how the ins and outs of the business worked. We also, our first distributor was a dairy supplies company called IBA. IBA has been tremendously helpful to us, very, very loyal to us. But it's very difficult for a route truck that's going around to every farm every 2 weeks and saying, yeah, I got silage covers, I've got inoculants, and I got this Acumen thing. Very hard for them to distinguish us amongst the 400 products, because the farmer already knows he needs feed and other bedding and other basic supplies. He doesn't know he needs an Acumen system. So that channel's been difficult to develop, even though I love the folks at IBA and I'm tremendously grateful for their loyalty. It's a difficult way for us to go to market. The third way we've gone to market is through the dairy co-ops. Now, the dairy co-op buys the milk from the farm and also gives them some services. The largest dairy co-op in the country, perhaps in the world, is Dairy Farmers of America. They have also become a supplier of Acumen equipment to the dairy farmer. And they're in a position where they can not only supply, but they can educate, they can support financially, and they can really wrap the services around with things like financing and insurance. So they're also a great distribution partner. And the most effective channels have been the co-ops and the vets. Now, how many co-ops are there? Maybe a dozen. We've already got the largest one. How many vets are there? Thousands. So that's why we've pivoted in the direction of let's do more to engage the vets in the decision process and the education process.
Great, great. I think we have time for a final question here. This has come in. How do you see fundraising and business financial development changing with this big pullback in the economy due to the pandemic? What's your take on that?
Well, the pandemic has affected everybody. We have everybody working from home. We are an essential manufacturer and an essential member of the supply chain for agriculture. So we're allowed to work, but it really has changed the landscape. If you look at venture capital, especially early stage venture capital, deals have gone down tremendously just over the few weeks of the pandemic, and for multiple of different reasons. Right now, it's going to be harder to raise venture capital than ever before. So that makes it even more important that our public sector partners like Grow New York, like the Tech Garden, and angel investors like myself and the folks that I associate with through the Start Fast Fund and others, many other funds in upstate New York that invest in early stage companies, we're going to be even more important to keep the ecosystem, keep the fluid that makes the entrepreneurial ecosystem function, which is capital, keep that flowing. So I would recommend that another resource people can look at is a not-for-profit called Upstate Venture Connect, uvc.org. I'm not I have no affiliation other than I'm friends with them, but I think it's a great resource to get in touch with early stage investors. And then of course, Grow New York and the Tech Garden are your hubs, your key resources.
Great. Great. Well, thank you again for the kind words about the work that we're doing. And with that, I will kind of close out by saying that Grow New York, the Center for Regional Economic Activity, which is the organization that we work for in the Grow New York program, and Rev Ithaca are really trying to be out in front, offering content for entrepreneurs during this time, both kind of conversational, quasi-networking. It turned into being a little networky today. It was great. I got a lot of comments in the QA that are directed to you, Chuck, and I think that's a wonderful way to add value to these presentations. But we're also doing more targeted topics on responding to COVID-19 directly. So please check out Rev Ithaca, grow-ny.com, Tech Garden as well. I'm sure you guys are ramping up, Janine. Yeah, and if you have anything you want to plug that's coming up webinar-wise, take yourself off mute, and now's the right time to do that.
The only thing I would mention is our Innovation Village coming up on May 14, and I can certainly send you that link. And what that does is an introduction to all of our ecosystem partners, so that anyone that's interested in anything the partners throughout our region can explore those resources specifically to their type of tech, or the funding that they need.
Great. Yeah. So we'll follow up for folks that registered for this session and share some links that can help guide you to more of these online resources that we're putting together. So I want to thank everybody for participating, Chuck, Tom, Janine, and I hope to see you all next week at the Lunch Specials chat Thursday at noon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you.